Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought let's do a tier list to see exactly what are the top decks in the World Championships as it's only a week away and where I think they fall right now in the sort of meta. So as I've chosen here, I'm using Trainer Hill. These are sort of deck archetypes I'm going to look into. So let's jump into it. So Zorobox, I generally think it could unfortunately maybe fall into the D sort of tier sort of bracket. I think Zorobox is still really powerful. I think it's really, really good in sort of the energy it gets with the reversal energy. So we're all really cool sort of attackers right now. But I think right now I would potentially put it on the D tier sort of list here. And it's not really talked about too much. I think Sableye and Greninja really keeps it in check. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think I might put it a bit low down. Ting-Lu, I think, is definitely a C tier style of archetype. I think it's a really, really powerful, especially the ability lock option. But I think that the Spiritomb's kind of going around there, Muse, which the deck is really focused on targeting, is kind of going more the fusion build to kind of go around its ability. So I generally think it isn't as strong as it once was. The damage output and the kind of like the capability of trying to get it out like turn 2 or potentially even turn 3 with attacking. That's why I'm kind of putting it down to a C tier. Lugia Single Strike, however, I do think it generally is an A tier style deck. I think it isn't exactly the one deck to absolutely beat, but I think the sheer capability of what it has to offer, it is going to be the most popular sort of Lugia build, especially from over there in America. The capability of the one-hit KO it has with the Tyranitar, the capability of getting those big easy KO anything with Urshifu, I think it's just super, super powerful and a really good archetype right now going into Worlds, and definitely the Lugia archetype to kind of keep an eye on. Darkrai, unfortunately, I might unfortunately put it down on the D tier as well, but put it more at the highest of archetype as well. It has its capability, but I think the squawk ability didn't in fact make it as quick as possible. Kind of like falling down a little bit slow. You aren't getting to those 300 HP big KO as early as turn 2, unfortunately, of Darkrai. It has an amazing ability to kind of get to it, to item cards back from the discard pile. It has squawk ability to really help at discarding a synergy. It hits for dark weakness like Mew and like Gardevoir, so it should be really, really powerful. But against the rest of the format, I think it's pretty slow. Snorlax Stall, I think, is a really good control archetype right now. I played against it with Gardevoir, did pretty well against it, so I will put it into B tier. It's definitely an archetype we should be respectful about, and people really are. We're playing more switching cards and Penny in archetypes which I can really control and stop them in the active spot here. So I think people are definitely respecting it, but I do think it's unfortunately going more on the B tier sort of archetype. Miraidon and Flapping, I generally think it could in fact fall under the B tier as well, probably more a little bit below that. I think it's really, really powerful. I think it's super strong and probably the more likely version of Miraidon to kind of go around there. Having them Raichu to get those big one-hit KOs in the late game is really, really powerful. And kind of like focusing more on doing that two-shot is kind of like where this deck is kind of like favoring towards it. Zeraora is a really good attacking option as well as a single prizer with free retreat to 60 damage from the evolved Pokemon is really, really nice as well, especially in that Gardevoir matchup. So you're not going to be trading 2 for 2 every single time. Intelligent Urshifu, I do think, unfortunately, it was potentially, I'm always eyeing it between a C or B tier sort of archetype. I think if it does well, it's a really good sort of B tier sort of deck here, but I generally think it may have had its moment to shine. But I generally think it could potentially just be a C tier archetype right now. We aren't seeing as much hype as it once did after NAIC. I think it's still really, really powerful deck. I think it's definitely one to always keep an eye on as well, but I think some other decks as well could potentially kind of go around it, and that's why I think it's a C tier. Raja Regieleki, I generally think is a D tier deck. It's not as strong as it once was. I think it's pretty weak overall. I would say that I think relying on the 3 prizes to get this big one-hit KO is something to really kind of like struggle, and this deck really does have that. Lost Zone Charizard, I think actually is out of the Lost Zone engines, probably one of the weakest sort of one, but I think it's definitely the strongest B tier archetype. Kind of focusing more on the Charizard Sableye, the Sablezard is still really, really strong, and exactly what kind of like popularized Lost Zone engines in the Lost Origin sort of format here. And Charizard still has its moment as well. Obviously, the Choice Belt and the sprinkling around with Sableye really helps get its one-hit KO. But I think the capability of what the Turbo build has kind of like puts it down into the B tier sort of archetype. Fusion Mew is definitely a tier archetype. It is super, super powerful. It's super strong as well, and definitely kind of like go and get the potentially that big one-hit KO with Meloetta or even Ice Cube as early as turn 1 is super, super powerful. I generally think that's why it's an A tier. Batcalibur, I generally think is really, really strong, and I would kind of put it on the B tier above the Snorlax Stall. I really love the Arceus build right now. I've been testing that well, the one at the top 16 and one I've showcased a couple of weeks ago. I think it's super, super powerful. Having the cross switcher with the likes of Cancer Clone really goes around the Ting-Lus, really goes around even the Snorlax Stall, or more importantly, also goes around the likes of Manaphy. And I think that's exactly why this deck is super, super powerful. Lost and Gudra, I think, does in fact go down into the C tier archetype. I think it does have some really powerful matchups, but not getting again the one-hit big KOs. I think that can really struggle in this style of decks. I think also having it can kind of be steamrolled sometimes by fusion remove, sometimes by single strike Lugia, by having Urshifu to go through the Gudra's effect. And you also have like the Lost Zone engine, which are kind of like focusing more on the bench or Pokemon down below. It unfortunately kind of falls down below, and I think it's just not as strong as it once was. Arceus Giratina, I do think it potentially is in fact a tier sort of deck here. I know it's very controversial. I do think that the Arceus Giratina probably a bit on the low sort of side, but having the Umbreon package, which Stephen Kent did like popularize a little bit over, we saw over in NAIC, could potentially, we could see that actually still be just as strong. I think that's why I'm going to put it more on the A tier sort of deck here. I think it's super powerful. I think it's really, really strong, and especially in that sort of matchup as well. I generally think having like Sharon's Care is really powerful. I think it has a really good Gardevoir matchup, and having that 2-for-2 and especially that V-Guard energy could really help it protect it from the likes of Lugia's, and more importantly, the opposing Giratina Lost Zone decks, which is exactly why I think this deck is definitely above that one. Mute Genesect, the regular double turbo sort of build here, do think potentially it is still in fact an A tier sort of deck here, and probably right next to, actually maybe it is more of a B tier. You have like, obviously you have the double turbos, you have like that sort of struggle there. You do have the path and disruptions capability, so that's why I'm really tying between an A or B tier. So with Mute Genesect, I think it has this capability. It has a really decent matchup. It does struggle obviously with the Tinglu, with obviously more Spiritoons, which are kind of going around there, and doesn't really play really around it unless they have boss's orders and kind of like KO it. So potentially I would say, yeah, it probably is a B tier archetype there. I think that's one thing that is really struggling with that capability. It's just it's not as strong as it once was with that draw sort capability. That Fusion Mew can really, really power through that. Lost in Giratina, I think is also a B tier archetype. I think it's definitely more important, like probably like here-ish. I think it's really powerful. I don't think it's as strong as people actually really give it some super credit for it. I think I love a deck. I help my friend pretty much get half a world's invite purely on just making them Lost Zone Giratina. But I think it can really struggle against obviously the regular Lost Zone sort of decks here. You have to focus more on going your single price attacking options, and you don't play as many as some other sort of Lost Zone decks. You're not playing Claras really. You're just playing like one or two Super. So you kind of have that unfortunately going against it. And you could potentially play like a Spiritoon to really slow down other sort of decks, slowing down Genesect, slowing down Zacian V's, and more importantly, sometimes slowing down Luminions. But I generally think it kind of like falls down a little bit flat, because I think it's just a bit slow. I think the color spell of Lugia, as much as I've given it so much hype, I generally think it is a C tier archetype. I don't think, maybe it's more like here. I don't think it's as strong as I really gave a bit more credit for it. I think it's fun. I think it's silly. I've really enjoyed the style of deck. I think it's really creative in the very much a 2-hit shot KO. But we're in the one hit KO sort of format, and I can really fall flat here. Gardevoir, no surprise here. I'm putting it in S tier. Even though I don't think it's exactly right now probably the sort of like absolutely best to play, but I think right now it's everyone's sort of rated, everyone's sort of testing against it, and I generally think that's why I'm putting it in S tier. It's a deck everyone's going to be predicted it's going to be probably the most sort of played deck archetype there, and I generally think that's why it's an S tier archetype. Lost Zone Box as well, also S tier. I probably put it maybe put it above Gardevoir. I generally think Lost Zone is in a pretty decent place overall right now. I think it's a little bit better than Gardevoir. The capability of what Greninja and Sableye have to offer to really slow down Gardevoir is definitely one of the strongest sort of archetypes we've seen in such a long sort of time. And generally think the turbo build as well, potentially getting that turn 1 KO of Dragonite, and Dragonite pretty much goes through anything. It's doing 250 damage, and you can sprinkle some damage with Sableye, turn 2 to get the extra KO is really, really strong here. And Arceus Giratina, Arceus Duraludon, I also think is an S tier deck. We can't knock Arceus Duraludon, sorry. So used to saying Giratina goes right next to it. It's been in the finals of the last 2 big tournaments in this format. Duraludon pretty much protects it from special energy, so slowing down these 2 decks archetypes here, potentially even this one as well, by making sure they aren't really attacking it, only going with Giratina, is really, really powerful. And also having Umbreon as well being an amazing combo with this one to really help against your Gardevoir matchup, against your Mew matchup. It's super, super strong here. I don't know why Miraidon Regieleki is kind of put there again. Let's put it really down there to know it is a D tier archetype. And then United Wings, I generally think it is a C tier deck. I think United Wings is just a really fun sort of deck here. It had its moment in NAIC. It kind of like put people on its radar, like saying like, oh, United Wings, it's Night March 4.0. It's really fun. It's really silly. It hits for weakness against Gardevoir, Mew, and obviously the likes of Lugia. So it's really, really powerful. But it only maxes out at 240 damage if everything's in the discard pile. Yes, you KO every single basic V, but if you think about the likes of Genesex, obviously you can get KOs of that, but if you think about the likes of Giratina V-Star, Arceus V-Star, or even Urshifu VMAX, you're not one hit KOing them and they can just shell that sometimes that damage away. So I generally think that's why it's a C tier. It was a big surprise factor, but one thing I've always noticed about Worlds, people play crazy, amazing decks. So that's always something to really keep an eye on here. And this is just my rough sort of take on exactly where I think some archetypes really are going with it. I hope it's been helpful as well. I generally think Lost Zone is in probably its best position right now. It's talked about quite a bit, but not as often as I really kind of like put it into its credit with it. That's why I think it's S tier along with Gardevoir as well. I think Gardevoir is obviously the best. It gains so much with Iona. It gains so much reversal energy in the Azure Town as well. And Arceus Duraludon is a deck which just never dies. It has been there as a rogue archetype, which I mentioned, obviously, in Scarlet and Violet format, and absolutely been dominating loads of tournaments, winning so huge events, getting into the finals, and pretty much taking up so many, being the more dominant version of Arceus. And obviously, Arceus Giratina is kind of a bit below them, but that's why I kind of put in the A tier as well here. The C and D tier, they're not there because they're bad. I just think right now in the matchup rise, they're just not as strong as they once were. And the B tier is definitely the fun sort of archetype sort of built in. So I hope it's been helpful. A couple of days time, I am going to release my top archetypes, which I think will be played at Worlds. This is the tier list has really helped, but then I'm also going to go into exactly where, in fact, I think some of these decks will, in fact, place in the tournament by being what my top archetype is. Spoiler alert, it's probably one of these three right up here in the S tier. So I hope you've enjoyed this style of video. I thought I'd try out a tier list video, and if you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe down below. Is it something I should do again? And please let me know, as I'm really enjoying this style of archetype. Of videos to do. I'll be in a couple of days time for another video. Don't forget to join the channel. It really means a lot and really helps out the channel as much as possible, and you get some really cool benefits as well. I will see you guys then. Bye for now.